Welcome, everyone. My name is Chris Cole. This is We the Parents Podcast, episode 11. I want to welcome my guest, Mayor Ian Baltutis. Ian, how are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate you being here. There was a lot of things that we've discussed that I want to discuss on the show. But first, I want you to introduce yourself and tell the audience. Obviously, you're the mayor of Burlington, North Carolina, where I reside or have resided most of my life. I'm right next door in Elon or Ossipee. But I consider, obviously, Burlington is the largest city in Alamance County. Is that correct?
That's right.
So you were the mayor I wanted to talk to first. So go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do, your background, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so my name is Ian Baltutis. I've served as the mayor in the city of Burlington since 2015. I get elected every 2 years, so I'm in my third term now. And I'm originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota, but came down here and got settled as an entrepreneur. That's in North Carolina. We're all part-time mayors, so we have to have a day job, pay bills. And so my background's in business and entrepreneurship, particularly manufacturing. And back in 2013, I got involved in the municipal realm, and just as a local community member and business owner, wanting to make the city better and really raise the bar on kind of everything we do, from development to family support to community to just the way local government interacts with people and represents them. And took a couple tries running for office, and then in 2015, on my third go around, I got elected at age 30 as the youngest mayor in the city of Burlington's history. So now it's my honor to represent about 58,000 residents in the 17th largest city in North Carolina and the largest Burlington in the United States.
We are.
The largest of all 28 of them in the United States.
I was about to say there's a Burlington in almost every state that I've seen so far.
There's a lot of them out there, yeah.
So tell us, you went to Elon, North Carolina. You went to Elon College. Is that correct? Elon University.
University, yeah.
And what did you study there?
I studied business, entrepreneurship, and journalism and communications.
That's awesome. Communications is a good thing.
It is.
You should start doing your own podcast.
I have thought about it, but there's not enough hours in the day for everything. That's one that I've just said, no, I'm going to let other people do great podcasts.
So one of the things that I wanted to bring you on the show about, I've been reaching out to a lot of community leaders, public servants in our community, outside, unfortunately, of the judicial realm, because not a lot of the people in the judicial realm want to talk. That includes child support or lawyers or attorney or active judges. It's sort of a very closed off thing, and family law is a civil matter, which is not, these are not closed courtrooms. These are open courtrooms, and nothing is private. It's personal stuff, but people can share as much as they wish. But I reached out to you because I'd been following you for a while on social media and some of the events and things that you do, and we have a lot of mutual friends. And when it comes to my children and the children of this community, and as a parent in Alamance County, I really wanted to get this message out to leaders, for those who may not understand what's happening, in the realm of family law. And we know that divorce is pretty prevalent nowadays, and custody battles and all those things get very ugly. And a lot of people who haven't been through it think that you go into it and parents work things out amicably, and then if someone doesn't want to work it out amicably, that a judge will sort of intervene and make sure these things get done properly. And I can attest to that's not true. I shared a little bit of my story, but a couple of the things that I wanted to mention. Obviously, today is Parental Alienation Day. It is now it's International Parental Alienation Day. But it's now Parental Alienation Awareness Day in the city of Burlington, thanks to you and those you work with, helping me get that declared and proclaimed in the city of Burlington. So I want to say thank you very much. It means a lot. I will be bringing that proclamation to court to present to the judge, because I want him to show what I'm willing to do as a father.
That's good. I appreciate you bringing that to our attention too. There's lots of different ways that we can support from the mayor's office, and one of them is to kind of help shine the spotlight onto key issues like parental alienation that you're working on.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a you have a podium, and I feel like you know, in helping the community, we were just brushing up on some Ian Baltutis ourselves, watching some YouTube videos and watching some of the things that you've been working on, and some of the things that you've been doing in the community over the last. How long have you been mayor? Since 2008?
2015, I got elected, so this is now entering my 6th year.
Okay,
And I'll
2008.
be
You
back
graduated from Elon.
from Elon. Yep.
Okay, all right. That's I
Yeah.
got my dates crossed.
It's all right.
So what we did, and what I'm going to do is pull up this proclamation, and I'm going to sort of read it off. And let's see if I can pull this up.
Yeah, we always like to structure these proclamations to kind of call out other groups and resources. So if somebody has no familiarity with the issue, to kind of help them
Right.
be more educated and then start their own journey into learning more about it.
Yeah. So give me a second. I'm going to pull up this proclamation because I want to make sure I read it and let the audience see what. There's been a lot of other mayors in and around not only this state but around the country. A lot of parental alienation awareness going on in Canada. I work with a lot of people in Canada, believe it or not, that also are heavy advocates in parental alienation.
Interesting.
And I want to. Yeah, it's happening everywhere. Australia is very big too. This is a global. I'd like to say this is a pandemic in and of itself, where you're having children grow up without the benefit of both parents. And the problem that's occurring is there's a lot of financial incentives, both that go to the other parent for keeping sole custody, but not only that, for the states themselves and the counties who are receiving what's called Title IV funding. And that's a federal funding based on the Social Security Act. And it awards states for child support enforcement. So it basically encourages maximizing child support dollar collection rather than working out an amicable shared parenting situation. Now, none of these attorneys, judges, or anybody that works in social services is going to tell you that this has anything to do with them, or they will probably deny even knowing anything about it. But Alamance County alone received millions of dollars in federal funding. The state of North Carolina had received even more. I think it was in upwards of $1.5 billion. So we're talking about a lot of money that's going into incentivizing funding social services and programs like that, rather than securing the best interest of the children, which by no standard is one parent, by no standard is just a mother or is just a father. It's two loving parents. And that what they found is that, the argument was always that a child did best with stability, and they based stability on the home, which meant the child should stay in one home. But what they actually found was that it's the emotional stability of sharing equal access. So the kids are very resilient in the fact that they do grow accustomed to living in two homes. But it's the relationship that needs to be protected with both parents.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. And we learn in government that we rarely get it right when we come up with policies and programs like that. And work you're doing to kind of help tie some of the federal policy and the local policy together, and then what it's actually doing on the ground, is a really important narrative to put together in anything we do in government and systems serving people. There's always improvements to be made.
Absolutely. So here's the proclamation. I finally was able to get it up while we're chitty chatting. It's hard to host and produce at the same time, but we do the best we can. So here is the city of Burlington.
Staff in here.
Yeah. So the city of Burlington, I actually have, this is a copy, and you gave me the nice copy with the official seal on it. Now, where does this copy go anywhere else besides in my hands?
We usually keep them on file at City Hall. If we weren't in the middle of a pandemic and we're having physical meetings, we would present it at a city council meeting.
Okay.
So it's also a great opportunity, again, not in a pandemic, for somebody like yourself to come and receive the proclamation, but also tell the council and the community a little more about kind of why you've asked for that and the work you're doing in the community.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely reached out to, I'm going to reach out to other community members and other programs such as the YMCA, where my kid One of my children goes to one of the after school programs and really educate daycares and schools and what's going on with this type of behavior. And we talk about it all the time. People who've never been through a custody battle think this is the weirdest thing. They're like, well, why wouldn't the judge just fix it? And I can tell you that there's a lot of money involved, and that attorneys keep custody battles going a lot longer. I'm on 2.5 years. I don't even have a criminal background. Um, no domestic violence, no this and that. I'm allowed to have my kids on the weekends. I'm allowed to have the kids when their mother says I can have them, when she needs whatever she needs. And I was allowed to be a father before. So I just want to go through this. City of Burlington, North Carolina, proclamation in recognition of Parental Alienation Awareness Day, April 25th, 2021. And it states, whereas alienating behaviors are often found in high conflict divorce and custody disputes, whereas parental alienation is a term used to describe any number of behaviors and attitudes on a part of a parent or a third party interfering or damaging the relationship a child has with their other parent, which could affect them emotionally. And whereas parental alienation deprives children of their right to freely love and be loved by both parents and their extended families. Because as we know, usually if a parent is alienated, the other half of the family is not seen. My parents have not seen very much of my children because my mother didn't always live here, and on the weekends they're not always available. So it sort of really limits the time that you're allowed to spend. You really can't raise your kids four nights a month. You're not really participating in the things like schooling and extracurricular activities, and you're not speaking to them on a regular basis. So, whereas parental alienation is considered harmful to children, as the alienating tactics used on the children are confusing, frightening, and causes a sense of insecurity. And whereas parental alienation takes advantage of suggestible, impressionable, dependent nature of children. And we know that children are very dependent, and they are very impressionable. They do trust and believe, and that's what we teach them to do. Whereas there's little public awareness of parental alienation, and that's why we're here. It's a growing issue in cases of divorce and separation. So as divorces are on the rise at a 50% divorce rate and a 40% born out of wedlock rate, this is becoming an increasing problem. Whereas with awareness comes education and understanding, which are effective tools against parental alienation, which is why you and I are here. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, I love this. It sounds so official, that I, Mayor Ian Baltutis, or you, City of Burlington, North Carolina, do hereby recognize Parental Alienation Awareness Day to increase public consciousness and encourage our residents to support their children caught in conflict between the people they love. This day, the 25th day of April 2021, signed by Mr. Mayor Ian Baltutis. This means a lot. So thank you so much for this.
No problem. So again, I appreciate you bringing this to attention, and it's something that needs to be talked about. So
yeah,
and again, helps shine that spotlight and helps more people be aware of that.
So give me a little bit about your family background, and I know you mentioned you were also a foster parent.
Yeah, so I do not yet have any biological children, but my wife and I decided a couple of years ago to embark on foster parenting. It kind of came out of the work we've done. She used to be a high school teacher, and I've done a lot of mentoring through the Boy Scout program. And so we've always been really passionate about helping kids kind of have good, positive role models in their lives, and give them good opportunities to succeed, and have kind of positive activities in their lives. And we recognized that we could step up even further as foster parents and lead by example as public figures in our community. And that was a great opportunity for us to dig further into kind of some of the family legal system, but also in the wealth of tools and support that are available to families throughout the state. We went through Children's Home Society here in North Carolina, and they require quite a bit of training. We spent about 6 months on and off doing weekly trainings, and then additional things, home certifications, CPR, you name it. We kind of joked along the whole process that it should be required for anyone who wants to be a parent, to really prepare
Oh,
yourself to
absolutely.
fully dive into that parenting, to understand emotional development, cognitive development, trauma, addressing trauma, all these different things, because it makes you a more well-rounded individual. And so we really enjoyed the process, and then enjoyed
Mhm.
making it publicly kind of shared to help others if they choose to go on the journey of being foster parents.
And you mentioned a really important thing, which was trauma. Um, we just mentioned the divorce rate. We just mentioned the out of wedlock rate of birth. A lot of people are having kids that aren't prepared, and not only are they not prepared, but they're actually behind. They're behind because maybe they grew up in a broken situation. They grew up in divorce. They grew up in trauma. They grew up in domestic violence. They grew up in a thing where uh, there's a higher rate of younger and younger children having children that grew up in dysfunctional homes. And the only way to get to the root of that and sort of hop off that hamster wheel and break that cycle is through education. As well as for me, I came from a very good home. It wasn't perfect. My parents did get separated. They did fight. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't perfect, but there were things that I saw that were great, and there were things that I saw that were not so good. And they were things that I wish that I had been uh, educated more, or started learning about maybe some light traumas or some confusions or misunderstandings that I had in an imperfect family. There's nothing wrong with being educated in this realm to better prepare yourself.
Well, I think it's important too to recognize that when I look at ACE scores. So that's
Yeah,
all the
aces.
different types of documented trauma. Almost nobody has a perfect score. Nobody lives
Nobody.
and grows up in a family that doesn't have some form of trauma, whether there was a
Exactly.
mental health issue or a bankruptcy, financial strains, emotional, mental, moving, a
Hmm.
parent leaving the household for some amount of time. All kinds of things that can contribute to that ACE score.
Right.
And we have to be able to understand and unpack our own background to be truly good parents going forward.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean that's another thing that I really want to start seeing if I can put together maybe even a program in Alamance County. I'd love to get with you on that and figure out how I can help share my education, which is just passed down to me. I'm no expert, but I've learned from a lot of experts and just relay that information. Part of it, a huge part of it, is this ACEs study and the measure of trauma that we deal with, and we all deal with trauma. So instead of just saying, "Hey, look, life's hard for everybody. We all have bags. You know what I mean? Just suck it up, buttercup, and pick up your
Not
bootstraps and
productive.
whatever."
Yeah.
That's not we are educated in psychology and science enough to the point where now we recognize these factors, and we can actually have better lives than we've had. That's the point of evolution and growth, especially
When
in
you
a
can
community.
intercept those traumas and the challenges they create and then counteract them and improve. And there's nothing that says that needs to be a lifelong stigma for anyone. We can
Right.
all grow past trauma like that.
And you talked about when we met, you spoke about again the kids in the community under, and I say kids because there are kids. They're under the age of 18 that are interacting in gang violence, in stabbings, in I don't know if anyone's. I'm sure people are getting killed. We don't talk
We
too
had
much
a
about
young
that in Burlington.
man get murdered just a couple weeks ago. Yeah. Um, and when you talk about parental kind of environment, I mean,
Hmm.
having a parent leave the household, having the children removed from the household, that is a huge trauma
Right.
in a young person's life, and something that they're going to have to kind of work their way through. And hopefully they've got a support network around them. But what you're talking about is how do we take the biological support network that was there,
Right.
the
Right.
parents who care about them, and make sure we don't undermine it any more than it needs to be, because we are seeing the outcomes in violence in the community, kids heading towards gangs, and other
Education.
crimes, and
Young
detaching
women
from
getting
education.
pregnant.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of fathers or daughters rather that are growing up without male role models in the home. They're more likely at a 4 time higher rate, I believe, is the statistic, to get pregnant uh, under the age of 18. And then obviously when you're doing that, you're probably setting yourself up to have a fatherless child because you probably had a child with someone who wasn't the best. So we're just repeating the cycle.
Yeah,
And,
when you don't have an interception in there to really help counteract that and help somebody grow through it, then
right.
it becomes systemic.
Do you feel that part of our system has been created though around it because we had a problem and we didn't know the reason, or maybe they did? I don't know how far out this goes. All I know is it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a belief in God to. You just have to believe in either God or nature that says moms and dads are important to children, and when you remove one, that causes a problem.
Yeah, I think so often when we look at problems in our community, what we're seeing is the symptom, but we
Right.
rarely see the underlying cause. And I'm always reminded of there's a story or analogy that says there's a man down by the river and he sees somebody drowning, floating down the river, and he swims out and saves them and brings them back to shore. And
Hmm.
he's catching his breath. He sees another person drowning, swimming down, like coming down the river, and swims out to get them. And you can just spend your whole life saving those people in the river, but if you don't walk upstream and see the person pushing them off the bridge, then
Exactly.
you don't actually solve the problem. And so we
So
have
yeah.
to really ask the tough questions and say, what is leading to these symptoms in our community? What is leading to the violence? And usually we as municipal leaders say, all right, we've got to have after school programs for kids, and we've got to have X, Y, and Z. And you start trying to tackle these things, but if you've got something like parental alienation that's happening early on in their life that you never take a look at, then you're never actually going to make real substantial progress in the community.
Right. We've normalized divorce and custody battles. We've normalized it and created industries around it. And family law attorneys, and I'm not talking about all of them, but the guilty ones know who they are perpetuating this. And the courts are perpetuating this. I can tell you that right now, there is no justification for the 2.5 year emotional and financial battle that me and my children have been through. And I've done everything I can besides get put in handcuffs for my outrage. I'm doing this as civilly as possible. I'm trying to get a message out as largely as possible. I've figured out a way to emotionally cope. I think I'm doing a pretty good job, as are a lot of parents. Do you know a lot of parents, why we talk about suicide rates. Anybody ever ask why men are committing suicide at such a high rate? There's a
Well,
connection as well as with veterans, but to divorce and custody battles. And when 85% of custody battles where mothers are custodial parents, and this does happen to moms too, and I have to say that all the time because some mothers will get upset, but then there is a large amount of support of women who go, yeah, dads get the short end of the stick. I remember I was an alienated kid. I didn't get to see my dad. So there is a lot of truth to the fatherlessness that's going on. And it's not because of deadbeats. I'm a man sitting right in front of you right now that says I'm not a deadbeat. I didn't abandon my children. I'm fighting as hard, if not harder, for them than a lot of dads done because they either financially are broke, they give up emotionally, they go through too much false allegations and abuse to get that father pushed out. The ex is very, we'll just use the word unwell, and they do everything they can, whether that be using the police, which I've had used against me, the courts, restraining orders. I've had those, and eventually, most men, not everyone has the. This is hard, Ian. It's hard.
I can imagine it takes everything out of you and everything to keep that struggle going. So,
And you want to walk away. You contemplate it, not because you don't love your kids, but you don't see an end to it. And it's like quicksand. The harder you fight, the more you feel like you're going to drown in it. So, but I
yeah, I
do
can only
also want to
imagine.
share.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go
I,
ahead.
I was going to say, so I've kind of seen it from the other side. When we were fostering, our kids have moved on at this point
Yeah.
to a different placement. But when we were fostering, the hardest question you get as a foster parent is, when do I get to see my parents again?
Right.
And they do a lot of work teaching it. I remember they talked about in the class early on, foster parenting used to focus on like protecting the kids from the biological parents and trying to create the
Right.
separation. And they realized the error in the ways, because as you're talking about, that biological family connection is really, there's a strong attachment there. And even if there's
Hmm.
trauma, there's positive attachment to some
Yeah.
degree, and helping the kids maintain that, but then helping kind of co-parent through the foster system is really the best way to do it. You can't drive a wedge. You have to do this as a team effort. And so building that relationship with the kids, helping them find that positive attachment and helping them maintain that relationship with their parents,
Right.
even in that time of uncertainty, was really, really challenging. But it broke our hearts every time that we'd have to take them back from visit. They'd be crying in the car ride back because they want to be with both parents. They want to have
Absolutely.
that relationship. And it's slow and it doesn't make any sense to them.
Right. Right. No, my kids have a lot of questions, and I do the best to soften it without sharing too much adult information, because I'm hoping that it resolves itself so that both their mother and I can say, we just had a rough time and we worked it out and we both grew from it. And that's all they have to know about it. But unfortunately, in my case, it seems to be the more I fight for my kids, the more she fights back. And it's a sad thing. And I've begged, I've asked, I've pleaded, I've gone to mediations, 3 of them, and just said, I just want this to stop. I just want you to be happy. I want our kids to be happy. I want to raise them with you. I want to be able to communicate, whether that means we need to have some sort of counseling or therapy beyond this for co-parenting purposes. But unfortunately, when we talk about that trauma, she comes from that trauma, and she has a family that I don't want to share too much of her stuff, but it wasn't healthy. Not that all of us have healthy families, and it's all imperfect, but there are different levels, and there's different amounts of abuse and traumas and divorce and violence and drugs and addiction, and everybody's got their own little portion. And I don't want to, I'm not calling her a monkey, but monkey see, monkey do. It's a hard pattern to break unless you become conscious of it. And
Yep.
Still, that doesn't mean, being aware of it doesn't mean you still won't do it. You literally have to go, like you said, go to these courses, these trauma courses, these
It's one
co-parenting
day at a
courses.
time. I mean, I'm a child of an alcoholic and of an Al-Anon and
Yeah.
other things, and it's something that I always have to be cognizant of, is kind of what emotional things do I carry with me that I'm not aware of. And even when I am
Right.
aware of them, you practice it every day. And as a parent
Absolutely.
going through what you're talking about, you're practicing that every day on top of parenting, on top
Hmm.
of fighting for custody. And
Right.
it's a lot, but you're never going to be perfect, but you're doing the work to get better every day.
Yes. Yes. One of the things that I also wanted to share, besides the proclamation, was obviously, Dennis Rydell, who is our District 64 of Alamance County, which is, I guess, a large section
House
of Burlington.
representative. Yep. Yeah.
House Representative Dennis Rydell, who is absolutely one of the most delightful human beings I've ever met in my life. As a father, as a grandfather, as a husband, as a man, he is pleasant. I was able to I share conversations with him all the time. He's incredibly helpful. And what he did was he shared with me, because he was a little baffled at my story. And he shared with me the 2015, 2016 House bill. I believe it was a Senate bill, actually, that was passed. And I'm gonna share this with you because I don't know if you've seen this. And I'm just going to
I
read
don't
it to
think
you
I'm
because I don't know if
aware
it's.
of it, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So this was an amendment that was made to the what's called the presumed shared parenting. And this is law. It was filed in the Senate March 26, 2015. And it's signed by the governor. And this is North Carolina law. And this is what was amended on it. And these are the 5 points. And it says, number 1, encourage focused, good faith best interest and child-centered joint parenting agreement development while reducing needless litigation over child custody matters. Now, that's a big one right there, because I can tell you right now that the family courts and the attorneys, both on my side and hers, have failed. Failed. Just in number one, 2.5 years, nothing resolved, no reason, nothing. Just a lot of trauma, a lot of kids asking questions, a lot of therapy sessions, a lot of police calls, a lot of drama. And a lot of times when these things get drug out is when they get uglier. And number two, it says allow and encourage parents to take responsibility. Allow and encourage parents to take responsibility for their children, for their child, by setting the expectation that parenthood will be a significant and ongoing responsibility, requiring the creation of a joint parenting agreement. That's number two. Number three, it says establish laws, programs, and court practices that encourage and support the maximum participation. Maximum is not 4 nights a month. It is not every other weekend. And maximum participation of a child in the parents' lives, regardless of the parents' marital status, which is a big thing because a lot of it had to do back in the day with only married parents or married fathers had equal rights within a marriage. It was only recognized then. Now, with the increase of, out of wedlock births, it's sort of become the rule to have children close to.
Well,
So
recognize that there's no standard family anymore. There's so many different ways the kids can be in a supportive household. That so often our language and especially legal documents like this is archaic and flawed. And so we need to look at what is the situation truly, and what makes that a stable, supportive situation, and how you encourage that.
So it says, so regardless of parental marital status, subject to laws regarding abuse, neglect, and dependency. So obviously, if there's domestic violence, if there's addiction issues, and we're talking about criminal records of, I mentioned to you, I was very transparent and on social media on everything about me, was that I did receive 2 DUIs in 8 years during the course of my relationship. Never any domestic violence, never any, like I said, they happened in the span of an 8 year, they're 8 years apart, 7.5 years apart. No issues with any, I got speeding tickets, but nothing on the law books that states that I'm unfit. If DUIs were a determinant of not being able to raise your children, most people would lose their children. And including some judges and lawyers, as the sheriff of Burlington or Alamance County has told me. So it's all fine and dandy that our judiciary and our attorneys want to keep their community safe, but they also have their own behaviors and things that they should be held accountable for as well. And I'm all about transparency. I've made mistakes in my life. I'm learning from them. I think that's what's valuable, and that to use old things or punish someone even after changes have been made, well, that's counterproductive. That's just going to add to, the cycle. Especially when parents learn things, you want them to share that with their kids. So number 4 says encourage both parents to share equitably in the rights and responsibilities of raising their child, even after dissolution of marriage or on an unwed relationship. And number 5 says ensure that a child will have maximum contact with both parents through presumption of shared responsibility, unless it's been established based on a preponderance of evidence, which in my case isn't one. There is no evidence. There's nothing. that one of the parents is unfit or obstructs a healthy relationship with the other parent. Now, I could argue, and I have attached this document to my motion to modify custody, that she has obstructed a healthy relationship with me and my children. I could argue that, and it would be fact. My goal is not to separate my children from their mother. It's for both her and I to be healthier people uh, as co-parents, so that our kids can be better off than we are. And that's the whole point of this parenting thing, is to leave the next generation a little bit healthier, a little bit smarter, a little bit off that hamster wheel of the cycle of trauma, and wake up. And they don't have to, they get to have a better shot than we did. That's the point.
Yep.
So that is the latest on shared parenting in North Carolina. That's a pretty strong shared parenting bill. Now it does leave some interpretation to the judge, and the judge does have discretion, but that is a pretty
It
that is
lays
a
out a
pretty
pretty straightforward goal set, like of what are you looking for?
This is a good friend of mine. He's an attorney actually in the state of Illinois. And he has gone through a custody battle where his children have actually, his contact has been severed due to false allegations. Yet he still is able to be a practicing attorney in law and represent other people's. And that's what he does. He's an activist while fighting his own custody battle. He represents other parents now, and he worked in Washington, D.C. He'd worked on legislation, and this is a really good man. Ted Bush was on a podcast of mine. You can go back and watch the episode with Cass Jackson, and Cass Jackson is a friend of mine who hasn't seen his kids in years and had his contact severed because he stood up to his judge and said, "What you're doing, Your Honor, is unlawful and unconstitutional." And that judge severed his rights unlawfully. So this is happening in this country. It's happening in North Carolina. It's happening in Illinois. It's happening in Canada. And it's going to take people like me talking to leaders like you, real leaders, people who want the best for people, to push out the bad actors. And there's a lot of that going on in our municipality, in our judiciary, in our executive branch, all the way from local on up to federal. And it's going to take men like you and me to fight back against men and women like that who are destroying the family unit and replacing it with government and welfare.
When it's not a quick win, which in the world of politics, everybody's like, well, what can I do that will show success by the next election cycle?
Right.
And what you're talking about is, it's a hard, long fight, and it's a fight that needs to happen. And
Right.
it doesn't have a glorious finish line that somebody can trumpet from elected office. So it truly is going to be one of these things where we have to just keep telling the stories and keep finding the paths forward. So happy to be here with you and to extend this conversation to bring more people in.
Yeah. The weird thing is, and I don't know what the conversation's about, I haven't listened to it yet, but right as we started this podcast, my children's mother called me, and that never happened. So I wonder if she was nervous that I was speaking to the mayor. I'll have to let you know off camera what that was about. I hope my kids are okay.
I hope so too.
And I hope she just sent me an audio message. So there's no text. She called literally as we were going live, which is probably not coincidence. She may be watching right now on YouTube. But anyway, between the proclamation and the shared parenting bill, which is law, I know I invited you to come out on May 5th. I know you're obviously occupied that day. I've also spoken with Dennis Rydell, who also has engagements. He's over there, in the General Assembly doing work pretty much Monday through Friday. But I really wanted some of our leaders to come in and, I'm fine with being the guinea pig of change. I can't change the world, but I can help change my community, and we can spread it outward. What it is there's a lot of states that have gone to shared parenting or presumed shared parenting bill, And what we've seen is a reduction, and these include Arizona, Florida, and Arkansas actually just did the same. And Texas is working on it as well as other states. And they've noticed a reduction not only in when you remove the conflict post divorce, because there's already emotions flying, and you take the financial incentives out and you say, look, you guys are going to start on even footing pending, not just a preponderance of evidence, but like actually strong evidence that says not that, hey, you hate his guts now or you hate her guts now because you guys broke up, but this is about parenting. This isn't about your relationship. And whether the courts have to mandate, maybe we don't need attorneys. Maybe we need counseling sessions. Maybe we need to restructure what divorce, because this isn't children are not assets, but we've monetized them and we've created them into an asset worth fighting over. And unfortunately, truly unhealthy parents use their kids, and it's Parental Alienation Day. Typically an alienating parent came from an alienating household. They learn this behavior in their family.
Well, yeah, what you're talking about is, again, finding that creative solution that really makes progress. It's just drawing a legal line in the sand is not the same as actually addressing emotional struggles and
Right.
detachment and alienation. Because you can't, I mean, you could write it on paper and say that this
Mm-hmm.
child is no longer like someone's responsibility, but that doesn't actually take them out of the family. It doesn't
Right.
actually break that connection. And so it's too easy to just kind of say, well, we've drawn the line. But
Yeah.
no, this is a life and a relationship and a human.
Like
And
I
you can't
said,
just draw a line and then,
we've
yeah,
normalized this as if it doesn't affect a child, that they go from seeing a parent to not seeing a parent, and that's just, that all you got to do is pay child support, and that's the best interest of a child. I can tell you, if you ask those children, they don't want that.
they want the relationship, the attachment. Yeah.
Precisely. So what is your advice to me, my audience, other fathers out there, mayors? I'd love for you to encourage all the other mayors in Alamance County, if they do get to watch this. I tried to reach out to a few. I would like parental alienation and declared in every city in Alamance County, and every city in North Carolina. And my focus is going to be Alamance County in North Carolina for right now. And if North Carolina and Alamance County can be the beacon, or one of the beacons, because obviously there are those states that have sort of taken the lead. The National Parents Organization, which is probably the largest organization for advocacy of shared parenting, is a huge research organization, and have done all the research. Have found all the studies that show that shared parenting is the best for the children, and it shows that when there isn't that shared parenting situation, and when we seek financial interests of the children, rather than not only equity but equality of the relationship, then the kids struggle with things like behavior, with things like teen pregnancy, addiction, incarceration, behavioral issues, things like autism, ADHD, anxiety, depression, self mutilation, issues in school, dropout rates, crime, murders. This is what's causing it. When you come from broken, you seek out acceptance, and unfortunately, people who are broken seek out other people that are broken that they can relate to. Well, broken people do broken things,
And it
and we need to
manifests
stop
in,
treating people.
yeah, I was
We
going
need
to say
to
it
stop
manifests in
treating.
so many ways. And what you're describing is what we as kind of mayors look at in the larger scope of how do we prevent violence in our community,
Right.
violence by youth, domestic violence. So the key for anyone out there and everyone out there who's struggling through this is you have allies out there, whether they're in municipal government, whether they're in the community sector, who are working on these things day and night. But so often we get siloed or segmented, and we don't see the connection across
Right.
the band. And so to reach out and say, here in Burlington, we have a program called Youth Solutions, and it came out of a string of murders and violence that we saw in the community. And folks asked, well, what can we do to prevent youth violence? And instead of saying, okay, here's just quick wins or here's what we think is the city, we did huge community listening sessions with folks of all different ages in the city, brought folks in, really dug deep. And we started to run into things like what you're talking about, which is kind of
Right.
what is the parental structure? What is the support network? How is that diversity lacking? And where are the gaps that we can actually target? And we created this overall youth solutions focus, recognizing that it's not just going to be one thing that's going to make progress on this. We have to work across the board and find the opportunities to move forward. So to everyone out there, all the parents struggling, find your allies, tell your story, because your story moves the progress along. Your story helps identify where's that gap, what's popping up in the community, where are the bad actors, where are the bad policies,
Mm-hmm.
what's disconnected, and then you can start to bring folks together to chip away at making actual progress on that.
What would you say to those parents? And I can tell you that I've experienced some of the fear. I know who my judge works for, and it's me. And he works for my kids.
A
He's
lot of
not my
folks are
boss.
elected, yeah.
And my judge, I hope he's fair on the 5th. I pray that he is. I hope that he is. I think he will be once he hears my argument, and I hope we can put this behind us. But a lot of people are afraid to speak out because they're like, well, what if they sever your contact? I've told you 2 stories of people who have stood up. Cash Jackson is a 20-year Navy vet. He has awards. He had a private security clearances and like top secret security clearances for this country. Came back and had an unfortunate divorce, as many people in military do. You want to talk about the rate of divorce in our military families and custody battles and the suicide rates. You think these men are coming back from, most of them aren't in battle, but they have military careers where it's strenuous and they're away from their families, and they come back and their relationship breaks down. They lose their kids. They wind up either becoming addicted. They wind up, committing suicide. You're talking about 22 veteran suicide today. We talk about that number. How many do you think are dealing with PTSD from family law? We don't talk about family law is one of the top, if not the top issue that's creating most of the major domestic issues. The things that we're seeing out right now in all this crazy COVID time, these people losing their minds. You just stacked COVID on top of a volatile population, a population that's been growing up traumatized for the last 50 and 60 years, since things like no-fault divorce, the Violence Against Women's Act, and these policies that have unjustly lopsided, created false allegations, ripping away children without any merit. We're destroying the family in America. A lot of the states need to be the ones to sort of, I'd say, hold back some of the federal policy, and it goes all the way down into our courts. But my question was, before I went on that rant, was a lot of these men like myself, although for whatever reason, I am all about, I wouldn't say confrontation, but standing up for what's right. They're fearful of speaking up, as if a police officer and a judge have any say. They're public servants. And as a public servant, I want you to give them a message. And I would hope that you would encourage these parents to do things like I'm doing. That doesn't mean break windows and this and that. What's happening is a terrible thing. My kids are being kept from me. And I think I've kept it as cool as possible and advocated the best I can. But no one wants to get thrown in jail for fighting for their kids. No one wants to go, bankrupt. No one wants to have their contact severed. But that's a very real thing that's happening. in this country and in Burlington, North Carolina, believe it or not. I hope people see this episode with us and more people reach out to me and you and go, I'm going through that. I'm going through that. Men, you are also fathers, you're being abused. Using your children as the fist that you're being abused with, and it's happening in our system. What message would you give to those who are frightened to stand up?
I don't know if I can put it all into words, but I would say, I mean, change like that is monumental and hard. And it takes folks fighting that battle every day and not necessarily winning, but moving progress along inch by inch, even millimeter by millimeter to change society. And so often these things that you're talking about, they have spent decades getting cemented in to the very fabric of law in numerous different ways. And stuff like that doesn't just get undone. If it took decades to form, it's going to take decades to undo. And unfortunately, that's a generation or a lifetime. That's somebody's entire parenthood. But it doesn't make it any less necessary to be done.
Right.
And so I appreciate the work that parents are doing, that folks are doing out there to help expand the conversation and to undo damage that's been done, and to really show kind of what is the diversity of the challenge. Because again, laws and policies never get it right on the first try. They never
No,
really
they
get it
usually
right.
make it worse first.
So and so it takes that kind of human experience. What did the letter of the law do? What happened on the ground? And then how do we tweak it and fix it?
Right.
And so showing leaders kind of what's happened and where the change can be made incrementally, because you're not going to get somebody who's going to say, oh, I've got it, we fixed all of it in one go. You're going to fix it inch by inch. You're going to fix it line by line in legislation to show, okay, here's this piece and here's what we're fixing, and you get that win. And that's how we build our democracy. It's a more perfect union, it's a more perfect country, but it's day by day, inch by inch, as we all work through our own struggles, as we all work to build a better future for our kids.
Right. Tell us, with our last few minutes, what Mayor Ian Baltutis has coming up in the future.
What I've coming up in the future, I mean, my focus is when I first got into politics, one, I never thought I would ever get into politics. I had no interest in the politics. I still don't have any interest in the politics of it. I have an interest in the doing the work for the community, volunteering, serving, working for the people who love this community as much as I do. And so my focus as mayor has been, how do we get more people engaged in that civic process? How do we get more people voting, running for office, participating in city council meetings, leading their neighborhoods, stepping up to tackle unique challenges like you're doing on parental alienation? Because everybody has their own window on the world, their own struggles that they're working through. And I don't see the same things that you do. And so it takes somebody like you raising your voice, raising your hand, and pushing the issue along. And we all have that window. So we all have something that we need to be engaging with in order to move our city and our country forward. So my mission's always been to reach out and empower folks. I'm one person. I can only do so much, but when we help a community become champions for the numerous issues that they want to work on, then our whole city becomes more efficient, more productive, and we just become a better place to live, where more people love the city that they live in.
I would like to speak with you, and we'll talk more maybe off camera, but tackling the issue of, for right now, until I'm able to raise my own children, what I can do as someone who's become a healthier human being and learned more about the importance of a male role model and a father. Speak to you about getting some sort of, and there's a lot of other dads like me that are maybe have some time and they like to mentor young boys, especially into, better men who maybe are caught in that cycle, and we can help break that by giving them a positive influence, and then notice the changes that are taking place in Burlington and Alamance County when fathers like myself go, okay, well, I'm working on this issue over here, especially with my own children. But now that I recognize the importance and the value of these young boys needing men like me or you to say, hey, man, I know life has sort of kept you down, but, it doesn't have to be that way. And you got people that care about you. Because that's ultimately, when you're talking about addiction and you're talking about violence, you're talking about broken people. You're not talking about bad people. People aren't all bad at the core. A lot of it is brokenness and trauma. So instead of locking them up, instead of treating them like criminals and lowlifes, and we just dismiss these young men. When we do that, we allow it to keep going. And eventually they're going to be cycling in and out of jails or dead. And if we really care as judges, mayors, municipal legislators, everybody, cops, if we really care, then we're going to look at the real issue, the root causes, and stop treating surface level symptoms in our community. And Burlington can be one of those cities that changes how we treat our unfortunate, or the ones who make mistakes. You can't save everybody, but we could definitely turn the tides here, especially on the things that you're talking about with this violence and these murders that's happening with these young men.
When, as you're saying that, we've talked a lot about the moms and dads who are listening right now, telling your story to leaders in your community. But I think, as you were just touching on, telling the story of your own weakness and failure to a
Right.
young man or woman, to a kid, sharing that the adults they see around them are not perfect. They have struggled
Right.
through some of their own things in life, and they've become better by
Right.
recognizing that, by learning from it. I mean, we in our society don't talk about failure enough. And we don't talk about necessarily in a positive manner. Failure is an opportunity to grow.
Absolutely.
And the more we look at it like that, the more we acknowledge where we failed and where we've learned, the more we teach the next generation that it's okay to fail. That it's okay
Absolutely.
to acknowledge your weakness, reach out for help, and grow. And
Yeah.
so I appreciate all the moms and dads out there who are willing to share that with their kids or the next generation as you mentor them and help them, because then you're helping them not fall into the same mistakes, the same challenges, and recognize that they're human. You're human. We're all trying to make it better every day.
I think you just did the closing monologue right there. I think you just nailed it. I don't think we have anything else to say.
There's
That was
clearly more
strong.
work to be done, but
Yes, and we're going to keep doing the work. But this was an interview that I was looking forward to, being that you're a leader in my community, and I consider myself a leader in my community as well. Although I'm not an elected leader, that may change soon, as I
that's
may
all right.
run
We
for
all
something.
lead from the positions that we stand in right now.
Absolutely. And I do need to come to a city council meeting. I need to get involved in that and see what's going on and see what you guys are talking about. Again, like you, I was not trying to get into politics, but I think something where the rubber meets the road at a certain age, where maybe you had some adversity in life, and definitely this custody thing with my kids really sparked my interest in wanting to be a public servant, in wanting to make things better for the future, in wanting no man or woman to go through what I'm feeling, including my children and my grandchildren. And so I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate the proclamation of Parental Alienation Awareness Day in the city of Burlington. I appreciate you taking the time, and we will talk soon for sure.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone.
Enjoy your evening, guys, and thank you so much. This is We the Parents, and good night.